We're here to talk about emotional fitness, and the notion of it is that fitness, using the analogy of physical abilities, it says the measure of ability to function efficiently and effectively, to be healthy, to resist diseases, and to meet emergency situations. I took out everything that was physical, but it absolutely applies from an emotional perspective because, when surprises or traumas come up, a physically fit person is able to cope, and they can have the agility to get out of the way, or they might have the endurance to be able to persevere, or the strength to lift the car in the emergency situation. And emotionally, the same thing applies. Let's say that in my example, I've had deaths in my family. My brother died and my father died. Two separate situations, and because I had gone through the development experiences that I did leading up to those, I was able to cope. I didn't break down. I didn't, I wasn't just a blabbering mess for long anyway. I could maintain some sense of composure for myself and for other people, like my stepmother. She was even more of a wreck than I was. So I was able to help somebody else because I had gone through the education and the training to be able to kind of handle that type of an extreme situation. So functioning efficiently and effectively, that's just on our day-to-day. I mean, we're able to go through and not get tweaked out by very commonplace stressors like commuting, which I have to often do. And so that isn't going to just, tip the scales and make me flip a switch and go postal on the highway, because I can maintain on a regular functioning basis. I can be healthy. I can resist diseases. In an emotional situation, that would be when somebody who is, let's say, I call them dysfunctional because they can't quite handle their emotions. But let's say that somebody just comes in and he's just in a rage. I can deal with that. I mean, I might not be able to extinguish his rage, but I know that that's not going to make me just flip out and, and be too afraid or shut down. But rather, I can cope with that in a healthy and responsible and active manner. And then we talked about the emergency situations. Okay. In fact, the angry customer might be a good one. And so let's bring this to the context of working with Drupal, right, or in business. Let's say that we've done the Drupal site and we've invested a lot of time, and we've kind of put ourselves out there, and we're kind of committed. This is like one of our pet projects. But our customer is kind of touchy, and then the site goes down, and they're like, "Hey, my site's down! I can't believe you're an idiot!" And they're calling me names, and I'm losing my one sale for the month. It's like it's super important to them, and they're intense and they're invested. And if I've done my part to stay emotionally fit, then I can breathe, I can hear them and honor that they're really afraid and they're angry, and I can help them. And I'm not like rushing off in shock to try and fix the server, making more mistakes as I go, right? That would be not good. So I just did this obligatory flow chart, but it's not a linear process. These are just some different. Oh, by the way, this is version 2.0 of the talk. This is the third time that I've kind of presented at a camp, and I was telling my friend, I was letting my marketing department lead for a change, and they said, and the part of me said, let's call this version 2.0, which means I've got to redo my entire slide deck. And so I just kind of threw this in here, but just to review them, we've got hope, having a secure base, having a sense of self, having supportive relationships, empowerment and inclusion, coping strategies and meaning. We'll kind of go over some of these with the rest of the slides. But the point of these is that, again, I'll use my own personal experience. My parents didn't have a really clear textbook to take me through, to teach me about developing my emotions. In fact, through their example and what they knew, I was kind of confused about how to do it. And I'm also Asian. And not to stereotype, but for me, that kind of meant that I was going to be kind of repressed about my emotions. I was going to be far smarter and intellectual, but I wasn't going to really show off a lot of emotions. I wasn't going to be very expressive. That's changed dramatically for me in the past. It's really been about 10 years. I was very much more introverted and very much more shut down in my emotional life. But I found a better way. So, complaints. We'll just start this off. These are some common things that I see that people are struggling with. Do people have difficulty communicating? Do people either have a hard time expressing themselves, or do they have a hard time receiving communication from people that are trying to, communicate? I experienced both of those in the past, where in one part I couldn't tell you really how I felt. I didn't have the vocabulary to tell you, and there was quite a large period of time when I just couldn't really recognize exactly how I felt. It was kind of muddled. And then receiving it, like my wife, my ex-wife, would try and convey how she was feeling, and I wasn't able to really understand that very well because I didn't have the vocabulary, or I couldn't relate to her. I didn't have my own personal experience where I could say, oh yeah, I can see why you would be angry, and I would have felt the same way, and so now we can kind of understand one another. Confused by other points of view, engineering versus marketing, right? You've got these two wildly different departments in a company because they've got different goals. Well, they don't have different goals, but they've got different priorities. By understanding on an emotional level, I believe that those, even though you might have different priorities, you can still come to understand and relate to one another and move in the same direction, even though you might be doing two different tasks, two different jobs. Feeling clumsy, insecure, inadequate, or lonely. That was a huge part of it for myself. A large reason that I was incapable of relating to people emotionally was because I hadn't yet developed a strong sense of myself, my self-esteem, my self-image, and to a large degree I was really dependent on other people, which is normal to a degree. As a person, as a child is developing, they're looking to their parents to give them a sense of who they are, what their self-worth is, their value, right? Whether they're doing right or wrong, whether, talking about, just being schooled in how to live life. It's often the parents' job, or maybe it's going to be family or community or maybe even a church, some other institution. But I had like mixed messages. I didn't really understand everything that was going on. So as an adult, I was kind of unprepared. Relationships seemed challenging rather than cooperative. Again, I can go back to my marriage. I had no business getting married at the time. I look back and I'm just like, oh gosh, poor kid, poor kid. And now I'm in a much better position where I can have a full relationship. And I have many, many very full relationships, but none of them have kind of gone into that level or depth of commitment and living together in partnership. Recognizable causes. So some people are going to be underdeveloped. We can call it immature, or we can just call it underdeveloped. They just haven't yet. It's appropriate, for example, that a 5-year-old is not going to have the emotional development of a 30-year-old. They really ought not to, right? I mean, it would be unfair to expect them to have that level of development and maturity. It would be unfair to expect them to be able to cope with the emotional landscape or situations of an adult. Totally appropriate. And yet, some people who don't have a very progressive and guided development are living adult lives. They're in their 20s and 30s or 40s, but they've got the emotional development of a teen. So that's being underdeveloped. Being overly developed. Perhaps somebody is really high functioning and they've made great strides in their career and in their life because they're just brilliant and they just solve problems and they are working their way through intellectually, making their way through life. Some people can do that, yet they may not have the emotional development to go along with it. It's a choice, right? If a person is comfortable living that way, so be it. That's great. I contend that even for those people that are brilliant, if they do develop their emotional self, that they'll enjoy a much more satisfying life, a much more fulfilling one, more enjoyable, all the while being just as wildly successful as they are. In fact, probably even more so, really. Mismatched activities, compromised values. That's a little obscure, but basically it's talking about, if I'm pursuing, let's say that my worldview is that everything needs to be happy. And I'm only seeking happiness, and I'm really just avoiding anything that's uncomfortable to me. That definitely that was my model for a while, my personal model, and it didn't serve me over time because it's inevitable that I'm going to experience some tragedy or some catastrophe or some sadness or anger or fear. And if the only thing that I've developed in my life, in my worldview, is happy, 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 I'm just going to be optimistic. I'm just going to ignore any of that stuff. I'm not going to be prepared, right? It would be like training to be a sprinter. I can do a wicked fast 50 or 100-meter dash, but I couldn't run 5 miles or 10 miles, right? Differing values. Injury or dysfunction. This happens a lot for people that have some trauma, some situation that was just too overwhelming for them to be able to tolerate or cope with or integrate. And we're seeing a lot of that, especially with soldiers that have PTSD. Something happened in front of them that was just too much for them to be able to make sense of, and it just kind of blew their mind. They're just like, whoa, I don't know what to make of that. I can't make sense of it. And now I'm just going to come back to the real world, to society, and my mind is still kind of blown. And I just can't quite relate to people because, it's just such an extreme experience. Same thing can happen with other situations, but we can get into that some other time. And then the great mystery, that I'm talking about the sense that there's just no way for anyone to prescribe one path that will absolutely work for everybody, right? Every one of us is experiencing this rich adventure of discovery as we go through life, or as we go through a project with Drupal, right? We're trying to figure out the specs, or we're trying to figure out how we're going to implement the thing, or it's a mystery because we're creating new things where every single day, every single project is going to hopefully bring up new opportunities, and we can't always do every single thing the same way. So there's a bit of mystery in the world. So, so I had some notes on here that were keeping me on track, but uh, well, we'll just keep going. Okay, so the point of my presentation is to kind of give an overview, because there really are ways that if we learn about them, then we can prepare ourselves and we can develop ourselves so that, you know, day to day or in extreme situations we'll be just much more capable of responding in an active and a deliberate and a conscious way, as opposed to doing something habitually, kind of missing out on how wonderful it might be in front of us. So a big part of it is leveraging experience. For me, there were a lot of times when I thought that I needed to solve things on my own, figure things out. And for a while, I was kind of proud. I was like, well, yeah, heck yeah, I learned things the hard way. It was kind of this weird point of pride. But where it stopped working was when I would have people offering me really helpful advice because they had experience, or they just, you know, they knew that they could see me walking down this, you know, this unhealthy direction, and I was just like, no, I'm going to do this on my own. This is not black and white, right? I mean, to some degree, hacking at something is super exciting and an incredible way to learn and discover and grow. And for me, a lot of my Drupal development absolutely worked that way. Where it wouldn't help is if I've got this whole team of people that have already gone through all of that experience, and I'm just ignoring them. I don't want to listen to you. I'm going to do this my way. I will absolutely keep learning whatever it is I figure out, but I'm missing out on an awful lot of experience. And I'm inevitably going to keep repeating mistakes that other people have already gone through, right? And can you imagine how much more efficient it would be if I just kind of listened and said to somebody saying, you know what, I've done exactly what you're doing. Why don't you try this thing over here? And you can bypass all of these things and go right over here. Maybe I could build a site in a day instead of 2 weeks. Or maybe I could keep some of my hair because, you know, I was, you know, just that frustrated because I didn't know when it was a known problem, right? It's like just ignoring the issue queue, whereas I could just search it in and say, oh my God, well, there's this lengthy thread of people that have already tried to solve this. That's what I'm talking about, leveraging experience. And this can come in a number of different forms. Maybe it's going to come from your family members because your parents or your brothers or your sisters, they've got a lot that they can offer. Or maybe not. You know, maybe you're an orphan, or your brother or sister is just not available. So you can maybe seek out an elder, grandparent, or the old guy in town who's just always been around, and just, you know, he's got something that you want. There's something about him that seems honest, honorable, respectful. You know, maybe you could ask him questions, and, you know, he might be willing to share. And who knows? Maybe he would be able to introduce you to things that your family, none of your family would even know. Why not take advantage? Why not be open to the possibilities of what somebody with years, decades of experience might have to offer? Or a mentor or a coach, right? Look for people that can help guide, give some guidance. Teams, groups, communities. Again, you know, going back to the Drupal community, there's just such a vast wealth of experience and knowledge, problem solving, creativity, all this. Avail ourselves of this. Assessment. The evaluation or estimation of the nature, quality, or ability of someone or something. The assessment of developmental needs. Okay, so there comes a time where, and I've done this over many, many times over the years, where, and I've often done it with other people, where I've taken an honest evaluation of what my strengths are or what my shortcomings are. Sometimes it's really difficult because, God knows, for most of my life, I just didn't want to hear it. I didn't want to feel criticized or like I wasn't smart enough.
Or to even acknowledge that you have shortcomings.
Yeah. What would that mean about me? Especially when I didn't have a good sense of, like, any self-esteem.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, oh my God, you're pointing out a flaw or a mistake that must make me just a piece of, you know, crud. And yet, the fact of the matter is, and a great analogy is just doing an inventory of stock, right? And the fact is that companies that are selling products, they're going through selling and purchasing and so on and so forth. And there's churn of their inventory. And sometimes the numbers in their inventory management system don't match what's on their shelves. And so they have to do an inventory. And they actually go and they count by hand how many of each piece they have. And then they compare it to their management system. There's no, that's done with a very objective attitude. It's not like they look and count these numbers and they go, oh man, we suck because we're like down one. We got one less than we said we were supposed to. We must be doing something horribly wrong. It's an indicator. It gives us some observations that we can deal with. But we don't have to judge it. We don't have to be critical. We don't have to criticize ourselves. The same thing can go with an assessment of our development. There came a time when it became abundantly clear. It's like somebody was asking me how I felt, and my typical response of, "Oh, I feel good." That response wasn't adequate any longer. Oh, what does good really even mean? I don't think that's even in the list of emotions. I had to start taking a look because the truth is that when I said I felt good, inside I was miserable. I was sad and afraid and troubled and confused. It certainly wasn't good. So doing an assessment of that for me was saying, wow, I don't really have knowledge of what my emotions are. I don't have an awareness or connection to them. I don't even know how to describe all these different names of emotions, like I can't remember. It was so long ago. Or maybe it's going to be an assessment in your professional career, right? You know, the fact of the matter is, and this is the truth, the fact of the matter, Bert, you're not very detail-oriented. You can be, but it doesn't come naturally for you. And you look more like the big picture thing. You're much better at interpersonal relationships, but yeah, we need somebody, for this job here in the company, we need somebody that's much more detail-oriented. And that's just not you. It's not a bad thing. You know, you're not wrong, but this is the truth of it. This is just an honest assessment of who I am. Knowing that, doing an honest assessment gives me opportunity. It's like, oh, okay, well, now that I've acknowledged that I'm not detail-oriented, do you have anything for me to do that's not detail-oriented? and maybe there is, you know, but it offers these opportunities. And relief, yeah, my gosh, here I am. I'm like thinking, I'm trying really hard, but it just doesn't come naturally. And I'm not doing nearly as good a job. And then somebody else comes along and they're just like, oh yeah, no problem, I can do this. My goodness, give the job to them. Not only are they better at it, they love it. That's their happy place. Put me over here, you know, give me 4 walls and headphones and let me get into my zone of development, and that's where or put me in front of somebody to talk with them about what their needs are. That's a good use for me, right? What a relief. It's just so much easier to live. Values and integrity. This kind of goes back to the whole, trying to do things on my own, trying to figure things out on my own. I'll disclose this. A big reason that I did that is I was like 7 or 8 years old, and I made this really deliberate decision I just wasn't going to trust people. It's kind of weird. And I kind of forgot about it for decades. But there was a time when I was like, yeah, I'm going to figure things out on my own. Yeah, that sounds good. I'm smart. I can trust myself. That sounds like the way to go. I'm just going to go. I'm going to do it. And I lived my life that way for a long time. It's difficult. Part of it is that that's all I knew back as a child, and I lived that way into my 30s. But throughout that time, if I had done something like I do now, which is to find people that I can relate to, people that I can talk to, like, oh, you, it seems like we're having a conversation about stuff that we can relate about, right? All those other people out there. I'm just kidding. This is great. We can have a vibrant conversation. We can all kind of grow in our awareness and our development together. We don't each have to do it all on our own. Find people that are willing and able. For a long time, my brother, God bless him, he was absolutely willing. He wanted to help me, but he just wasn't able to because he didn't have some of the experiences or some of the knowledge that he needed to be able to help me. As opposed to another person who did have that knowledge. And I could talk to him about the exact same thing, and not only was he willing, but he really had something that he could offer. Being able to recognize when people have that or not is, I think, a kindness. It would have been like my daughter. She's 13. She loves me. I love her too. She is incredibly willing to try and help me with things, but she's not able to lift as much as me, so she can't carry a couch with me. She's not able to earn as much as an adult, so it would be unfair to expect that of her. See, there's a difference there. As opposed to, maybe she's able to, she's absolutely able to go on a bicycle ride with me, but she's not willing because she'd rather do something else. But then if I find somebody who's both able to go on a bike ride with me and willing, oh boy, let's go. Boy, how exciting that is and how vibrant of a life that is to be able to do something with somebody else. And if they're a professional bike rider, and they're like kicking my tail down the down the trail, and I'm like hustling to keep up with them. That's helping me grow. That's kind of giving me this opportunity, this impetus to improve myself. Mutual trust and respect. That's we could have these other things, but if I don't have trust, then I might not be able to really tell somebody what's really going on. It's kind of difficult to just talk at the superficial level, or the respect. That's a powerful one where we can talk about. We might be able to have these conversations with people, but you can just feel like they don't agree. They don't respect the choices I'm making. It's like, I don't feel like talking with you. You're kind of mean. You're kind of creepy. You're kind of putting me down, even though you've got a lot to offer. The way you're doing it is kind of calling me names, or you're telling me that I'm stupid, or I don't know. It's just so by finding these types of aspects within people that we can relate to and agree on, there's so much more that we can do together. Now, I'll get into some of that also. So, healthy development. There's skills and talents. These are things that we're kind of inclined to start with. We've been born with some talent, or we just have an aptitude. Our brain, some of us are more right than left brain. So we've got this aptitude, and so let's acknowledge that. I do think more analytic than creative. So that's good to know. It doesn't mean that I'm devoid of any creativity, but given any circumstance, I'm going to kind of think in a linear fashion. But then there's education and training. So maybe I've got some, I've got more ability in my intellect. If that's all I focus on in my school and in the stuff I try out, then that gets into that overdeveloped kind of situation where that's the only way that I look at the world, and it's the only part of myself that I can bring to bear. Whereas if I, let's say, took a liberal arts degree and I tried some art or dance and developed this creative aspect of myself, then that can kind of broaden all the parts of me that I can use, or all the different ways that I can look at the world. Practice and application. So I'm born with some talent. I've gone to certain schools. Now, how am I going to actually make stuff? How am I actually going to do things in the world? That's the practice. That's the application. I could, again, let's take it to the extreme. I could be born with an aptitude of being intellectual. And I could go to school for that type of training. If I just don't practice that, then it's just kind of all in the head and theoretical. It's not really making any changes in the world. It's not really creating any. Well, let's go the other way. I'm intellectual, but I've taken a couple dance classes. And then I go 3, 4, 5 times a week to take tango. And I'm on the dance floor, and I'm dancing really frequently. I could become incredibly good at dancing. Right? Healing. Healing's a really important thing. I kind of threw this in here, but it's definitely, it's kind of like an asterisk. And it's if needed. And this goes back to the assessment, right? If in the assessment it's discovered that there's some part of me that has incurred an injury or has gone through some trauma, ignoring it can be hurtful. Right? It would be kind of silly for me to, well, it's like the Monty Python thing. Oh, it's only a flesh wound, right? I'm hacked off at the belly. If I don't tend to that, then it could get far worse, and I certainly wouldn't be able to use the lower half of my body. So, along the way, as I'm going through this development, here's kind of an interesting example. Let's say that I was born somewhat intellectual. I've gone to school and I've learned all of these, really brilliant things. But it turned out that one of these things was incorrect. It was based on inaccurate data, or the theory had ended up being proven wrong. If I don't tend to that injury, to that misinformation, or to that path that no longer works, and I keep going down that way, I'm off in the woods. I'm not able to help anyone, let alone myself. But if I do address it, I'm like, okay, I get it. It's too bad. I've had already invested a bunch of time here, but it's definitely no longer working. Let me find another way. And maybe we can go back a couple slides and we can go to our elders, we can go to our coaches or our guides. Hey, I went down this wrong path, it no longer works. What do I do now? Oh, well, try this. Or this. Or take a break and go on vacation. See what comes up. Who knows? Who knows? But if I don't deal with that injury, it's a lot of lost time, a lot of lost energy. Relationships. So we can talk about this in the context of work. And we can go back to the whole marketing versus engineering. Two wildly different divisions or departments. different duties, roles. They've got different parts, different jobs that are both vital to the company, but they're very different from one another. It's important, it's valuable, I should say, to understand what those roles are, because if that wasn't paid, if nobody was paying attention to that, then the engineer might be spending his time trying to do marketing, and he's not very good at it, and he's not getting any development done. So let's be clear about what our roles are. Boundaries is, again, kind of crossing that line. You know, if the developer is on his own time kind of doing some marketing, is that okay or not? Is he aligned with the marketing effort of the marketing department, or is he maybe undermining their message inadvertently, unconsciously? But let's be clear about where. Yeah.
It's just as bad the opposite. If you have the marketing person doing development, to me it's very stressful working with marketing people that are in the code.
Yes.
As a developer, because sometimes they're real bright.
Yes.
Sometimes they even know coding standards pretty well.
Yes.
But they think very differently, and sometimes they go to an extreme where they use concepts that they think are best practices, but most engineers have avoided.
Right.
And you try to talk sense into them. Oh no, it says right here that this is the way you're supposed to code.
Yeah. Yeah.
Thank you very much.
That's that. Yeah, that can be really frustrating, huh? And it certainly isn't helping the product or the company, right? Yeah. Thanks. Thanks for bringing that up. And actually, that kind of leads into the responsibilities of things. Knowing what my role is. Let's say that for the moment I'll play the part of the developer, the engineer. And I'm clear about just doing engineering. I'm not doing any marketing. Because the boundary has been really clear. We've kind of discussed this and said, hey, you know what? Even though I want to kind of do some marketing, I'm not going to. I'm going to respect that we've agreed that that's the boundary. As opposed to like last year when we agreed that we would try the other person's job a little bit. Now we're not doing that. We've got a very clear boundary. But then the responsibility is, am I keeping my word? Am I really staying on my side of the bound? Or maybe it's happy hour and I'm like, oh man, I'm just so excited about my job. Let me tell you about all this stuff. And I start talking about the product. And maybe, I don't know, you know, it could be whatever, but if I'm going to honor my responsibility, maybe the best thing would be to say, you know what, I can tell you about the engineering of it, but if you want to really learn about the product, you should talk to my marketing guy. Pass that over. Honor that responsibility. The other part of it is maybe that marketing guy is coming over and he's starting to do some coding. And I'm like, hey, you know what? We had an agreement here that you weren't going to do this. Yeah, but I know this, and it's a really quick fix. So just let me get in there. Yeah, but we...
Usually they say, we're not getting stuff done fast enough, but we just started.
Yeah.
We need it right away, and I'm available to help, so I'm doing it.
Yeah, right.
Instead, we'll have doing some project management to let us figure out how to work more efficiently.
Right. And, you know, it may be, there may not be, especially if you're in a startup and there's only two of you, there may not be a really clear way, clean way, harmonious way of keeping these things down. And, you know, that kind of goes into a marriage. Sometimes husbands and wives are really, their hearts are in the right place. They want the company or they want the marriage to succeed. But it's hard to just really hand over the reins for all of this responsibility, all of these duties. Or maybe the better thing to do is to have that open communication and work things out and negotiate and say, I know it's been really hard for me to let you do all the engineering. Let me try this. Let's set it up in a sandbox so that I'm not really trashing your stuff. You know, give me a chance to kind of do this. You keep working on your thing. I've got some time. I'm going to work on this in a safe environment. And then we can take the time to look at it together. That's working things out, right? That's negotiating, that's clear communication, it's like all this great stuff. Great hallmarks of emotional development because there's the respect, there's the trust, all these different things, right? Where are we at this time? 153. Okay. Call to action. So, things to do. Personal development. There are lots and lots of different ways of improving emotional health and emotional knowledge, intelligence, the practice, the training, the education, developing your support system. It's vital. And for a long time, it was really surprising. You know, just a little over a year ago, I discovered this community of people that I never knew existed. I'm 46. I went for over 4 decades not knowing about this community of people that have been so supportive and so respectful and so trustworthy and so healthy in their development. And now I can come in here, and the things that we've done in the past year have been phenomenal. The same thing goes with the Drupal community, right? It's like develop a support system, get onto IRC, start, striking up those conversations, or get into the issue queue and have the dialogue and develop that and pay attention to who it is and have that, start creating those relationships. Because when 2 people are on the same path together, it's like amazing what can happen. Lots of resources, but you have to seek them out. I have APIs. I was trying to get clever about bringing this back to technology. But, wouldn't it be sad if we reinvented the wheel and we created this way of managing Rackspace all on our own? Man, we were clever, and the thing works really well. And then we did a Google search, and they're like, oh my God, Rackspace just created... They've had this API that's existed for years, and it's mature as hell. It's gone through like 3 major iterations. I could have just done that. I could have just used their... The same thing happens with emotional development. There are some people out there that are really, really good at having a vibrant life. And they're willing to be available and share their information, share their knowledge. If I'm just ignorant and I'm just not looking for it, then I'm missing out. Tools. Let's see. Honesty, open-mindedness, and willingness. How? H-O-W. I'll just leave it at that, and let's just let that kind of sit for a little while. These are essential, and they work all the time. And they're yours to use. Nobody has to, they're totally free. The gate, actually, I'm just going to punt on this because this is what I presented the last 2 times. So if you look for emotional fitness on YouTube, I spent a lot more time on the gate there. And then vocabulary, meditation, and perspective. I'll start with perspective. Things might get kind of heated between engineering and marketing. But the first person of those 2 that can maintain some perspective and say, hey, I know we're really upset about this right now. Let's go to lunch. Let's chill out for a little. Let's go bowling. Let's go do some paintball. And then after the paintball, we'll come back and we'll revisit this. Gain some perspective. Sleep on the problem, right? Meditation, I don't want to get all corny and spiritual, but hey, generals, when they're planning wars, it's not always busy work. There's some times when they're just kind of sitting quietly and they're trying to figure out the big picture, how everything fits together. And they do that by just kind of quietly getting rid of that distractions, right? They're saying, hey, hold all my calls. I'm planning a war. Keep those trouble tickets off my desk for right now because I'm trying to plan this next sprint. I need to quiet down. I need to get rid of distractions so that I can do the best job possible. That's what meditation means to me, to a large degree. And then vocabulary. It's like, hey, let's learn some common terms here so that we can have an intelligent conversation together. There. Okay, you can see that. Okay. Those are just some other things we can talk about. But I'm out of time. Oh, here's the benefits. What are the benefits? We can be happy, we can be vibrant, we can be free. Oh, thank you all very much.
All right, thanks guys.